A lot of people think that the Bitcoin top is in right now, right? Or that it at least will be in somewhere this quarter. I have my personal opinion on that, which also you can find in another video, so subscribe. But let's say that people are right about the top being in. Then where could the price potentially go if we are now about to go into a bear market? Because of course you want to buy up again at the lows, right? So let's take a look at that. And I think that the answer will be quite interesting in this specific case. So welcome to the Fomo Factory. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the bell notification on. Let's get right into it. So let's assume that the top is in. And full disclaimer, I'm not saying that it is. I find very little reason why it would be. But again, that's for another video. But let's say that the top is in right now. Where could the price go if this is the beginning of a bear market? So let's say if this right here is the same as this right here. Now, there are, of course, ways to look at that. And I want to keep every video short from now on. You need your time, I guess, to cry about the bear market, right? So I can't make my videos too long. But there are multiple ways to look at it. You could say like, well, Bitcoin here went down 86%. Here, Bitcoin went down 83%. And in this bear market, Bitcoin went down with 77%. So, of course, the returns and the losses are diminishing. So maybe 70%, right? And if you take it like that, you could say, well, if we take it from the top, give or take 70% down, then the bottom could be at around $37,000. Is that a good price to assume that it could go to? Let me give you a couple things that I think where it could go this time if that happens, okay? So the first thing to take a look at is, of course, one of the biggest players in crypto's cycle, in Bitcoin cycle so far, which is Michael Saylor with MicroStrategy. Right now, MicroStrategy holds a lot of Bitcoin. People were mainly saying about this cycle that it's not retail driven, it's only institutions. Retail isn't there. Institutions, they play this game, right? And they kind of decide what's going to happen. Well, of course, Saylor can sell, but I doubt it. His sell button, he sells that, but I don't know. Overall, though, his average buying price sits at $73,000. Right, so I think that Michael Saylor and his company MicroStrategy, they won't allow Bitcoin to go much lower than their average buying price of $73,000. That doesn't have to mean anything, right? But a couple of things that I'm about to tell in this video, if you put them all together, then you want to wonder like, okay, does that make sense? Because on their own, like nothing always makes sense, of course, right? But put it together. But that's one. The average entry for MicroStrategy is around $73,000. Now, if I put my cursor over it, you can also see what else is there, right? At around $73,000, a couple $1,000s, less or more, is actually where the top was in the previous cycle, right? So if you look at the top in the previous cycle, you could say like, well, we can visit around that area. It's give or take also what we did in the last cycle. We had a big wick above it, but overall, most closes at that level and the most resistance was about $16,000, give or take. And that's pretty much where we have bottomed out this cycle as well. So these are two things that lead to, and again, plus minus 10%, 15%, right? We can never time the bottom. Don't try that at home. Also not at work or whatever. But that would plus minus be $70,000. Now, what's also interesting, right, is we have heard people say, at least I've heard, and maybe you've heard the same, Bitcoin never goes below the price where it was on the election date. Now, I don't really, I'm not a fan. Therefore, I'm saying like, don't, put too much weight on one thing, but put them all together, right? Because with crypto, it is a fact that whatever the hell we look at, we don't have a lot of data, right? We are now in cycle number 4. So we only have 3 cycles to look back at. Yeah, if something happens 3 times, it might be a trend, but you can still call it somewhat of a coincidence or, something like that. It's not that it has like 50 years of history. And this is one of these things, right? Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin, indeed, it was here, the election, well, clearly never went below that. Here it was the election, never went below that. Here it was the election, and it never went below that. And now we had the election price, which was at this candle between, what was it? $68,000 and $80,000. Was a nice, fun week, actually. Right? So you could say, like, okay, in that case, I don't know the exact day anymore. That's a little bit more specific, actually. That was a price of $69,000, actually. That's also the previous high. So also, so far, it went never below it. But keep in mind that it never did doesn't mean that it will never or that it never could, right? But let's put it together. So that's reason number 3 that also leads back to around $70,000. Now, this is where it gets quite interesting, if you ask me, right? Because these are already 3 things right here. Then we have another one, and that's the 200 weekly moving average. Now, I am more a fan of moving averages, as they say something about the psychology behind it, what people trade it for, and what really the big mental support resistance zones actually are. And if we take a look at the 200 weekly moving average, let me put it on the 200 and on the weekly time frame. Here, you can see that Bitcoin always, like there's not a lot of history, but we work with what we have, right? When it goes down into a bear market, of course, it could wick a little below it. That's all fine. But overall, it was kind of holding the 200 weekly moving average here in 2015. It was also holding it in this bear market right here, twice actually. And in the last bear market, fair enough, we went a little below it. But overall, what was that? Like 30% below it, right? Overall, it was around that 200 weekly moving average. Now, at the moment, you might say like, well, yeah, it's bearish, right? The 200 weekly is at $55,000. Yeah, but we're not gonna, if like we just entered a bear market, then we're not gonna hit the bottom today as well, right? So if we purely want to stick to only seasonality and therefore like say like, hey, the top is in, so therefore we should also expect a bear market of 1 year, because usually also the bear market lasts 1 year. Then it's, in a bear market, it moves a little different than in a bull market, but it's such a big moving average. You can basically put it like this and get a decent projection of where it might go to. And if you then look, okay, October 2025 top, well, fine, then October 2026 bottom, give or take. And where is that bottom sitting? $70,000 again. And again, according to this, you could dip below it, doesn't matter. If you feel like I want to buy in the next bear market around, then there's more and more and more lining up to that $70,000, right? So that's another one, which is pretty interesting. Now, there's another one that says something about it, and that is the logarithmic regression band. This is not based on necessarily moving, but it's just based on how Bitcoin is moving over time when you look at the cycles, and you can draw it pretty decently, right? Where there's the top, where there's the bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom. And if you take a close look at this, you can see that in a bull market, it hits the top. In the bear market, it hits the bottom. Top, bottom, top, bottom. Now, this one is a bit contradictory, actually, because you can see that we clearly never hit the top, like not even close, right? Not even close to it. So you could argue, like, well, if we never hit the top in the first place, then we might also not hit the bottom. right? It's not weird to say, actually, that Bitcoin always went down in a bear market with 70% plus because we got a huge rally to begin with, right? Bitcoin last cycle, 77% down. Yeah, but it's also because it went 21.5%, 21.5% up, right? So there was a big euphoria phase. It was green, green, green vertical. So of course the bear market compensates for that because a lot of people are in massive profit. So they take massive profit as well. In this cycle, we never got to that part yet, right? We never got there. It was up, sideways, up, sideways, up. Very slow, steady, way more sustainable. So why would we go into such a deep bear market of even more than 60%? Right? It just doesn't make sense. But okay, the pessimist could say, well, it's all diminishing, so we never hit the top, and therefore we are going to go lower than the bottom. I think that doesn't make sense, but I bet that there are people probably thinking something like that as well. Right? However, if we just ignore the top for now, right? Because again, that depends, is the top in or not, right? And if the top is not in, then we can say like, well, this time is different because not a single buying indicator or a selling indicator has flashed. And no, well, that again for another video. But whatever about the top, right? If we look at the bottom, you could also kind of, like with a straight line, it's never perfect, but over a short period, it's not that bad. You could say like, well, let me make it a little bit more. Yeah, okay, whatever. Moves somewhat like this, right? And again, then 1 year later, October 2026, this thing is sitting at $77,000. And again, that's assuming if we hit the lower trend line, right, of the logarithmic regression band. We could, here, this cycle, we never got there. This cycle, we went between the lower band and the mid band. Here, again, we went to the mid band. Here, we went to the lower band. Here, we went to the lower band. So it's not really a trend. It's not diminishing. It is not going higher. It's kind of all over the place, right? So we might hit the lower band. We might wick below it this time. We might go to the mid band. All possible, right? But around that area. And that says around $77,000. Now, again, this is all based on if the top is in or not, right? And the answer to that is nobody knows, right? No, there are people, of course, very certain that it is. There are people very certain that it isn't. I try to look at what's most likely. Let's look at what we have, but let's look at everything what we have. But if you want to be cautious, bearish, glass half empty, whatever you want to call it about it, and you say that the top is in, then 70K would be my worst case scenario. To wrap it up, you want to consider, is that a good reason to sell your Bitcoin? Right? Because if that is the case, then 70K from this point is down 30%. Right? We already had a decent pullback from the top. Is that 30% something that you feel like, yeah, that's what I want to sell right now in the hope that I am right and that it goes down here so I can buy, with the chance that it might go higher and that might not outweigh that 30%. So that's up to you. Let me know. What do you think? How low could it go? And based on what? Drop it down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Like the video if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one.